Okay, we had to budget a little extra time for this one because the Browns, like, this was like steering a car, and on an icy road. I'm just like, oh my God, what they did
This
was
is like
so
the I've heard of every one of the guys in their draft class won. You know what I mean?
right.
Like
Well, yeah. I mean,
generally there's a name in there that's like who? There's not one of those in this year's Browns draft class.
right. And I started the draft, and trust me, everyone knows as someone who grew up a Browns fan and who left the Church of the Cleveland Browns in a very public way. Um, it's not harder for me to praise them, but it's not like something I'm looking to do. But I thought they did a great job. I thought getting someone to pay that much money to come up for Travis Hunter was
Yeah.
incredible. I love Mason Graham. Other people don't like Mason Graham. They needed to make life easier for Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett had
Yeah.
a 30% double team rate last year. That's
I agree with that. Yep.
unsustainable. You have to help him out. Where I feel like everything, like the first three picks, I'm just like, I'm in a constant standing ovation. Mason Graham, Carson Sweshinger, like that, because you don't know what's going to happen with JOK,
I
right?
love Schlesinger was like I was convinced the Raiders were going to take him. Obviously, they didn't get the chance to because Chip is there and Chip coached him at
Correct.
UCLA.
Yeah.
And I had another team tell me it was almost hard to evaluate UCLA defensive players because Schlesinger was making all the plays.
It was everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, if you have the Browns had so much success with JOK and kind of creating that big nickel defense, and now we don't know
Mhm.
what's going on with JOK.
Yep.
Is he going to play again? Is he going to look the same? And Schlesinger is one of those guys that you can plug in. Quinshawn Judkins. I mean, Albert, you can
He's on
tell
my
us that
wall.
he's one of the
He's on my
greatest players in
Yeah.
college football history. But where I think it just gets complicated here is I don't know. I mean, you tell me what you think of taking after all this. Like you're doing it right. Like everything looks exactly the way it should. Why do you throw Shadur Sanders into this mix in the fifth round? I
I
think
think we
I
all have
know,
our
but I'll ask
suspicions.
you.
I
What's
think we
that?
all have our suspicions. I mean, but I would say
Is your suspicion that it's Jimmy Haslam made a phone
like, I mean,
call?
there's that suspicion out there. I know, people I've talked to think that, and I don't know for sure. But I mean, I would say, like, I mean, look, like, if he is sufficiently humbled and like I will
Which
do,
this process may
we,
have done.
we can do this later in the week because it's too big a conversation to
It
have
is.
right
It
here.
is.
But look, like he fell out of the first round because of talent and performance. Okay, like that is what it is. Like it's just like most of the league didn't see him as a first round talent. I think that's part of why he fell through the second round too. Because generally, if you view a guy as he's not a long term starter in the NFL, you aren't taking him in the second round, which is why no quarterbacks go in the second round generally, right? Like if a guy's gonna be a long term guy, he'll go in the first round. After that, it was about everything else. And I think there's a huge piece of this. Like they really fouled up their handling of the process. And like Shador carried himself as if he was a lock to go in the top five.
Yeah.
And if you're a guy who might be the 50th guy on somebody's board or the 60th guy on somebody's board, which is the reality for Shador with some of these teams, well, then you have to treat every single one of them like a serious job interview, and you have to handle them that way, and you can't go in and blow it off. And I do think like that's the way some of these were handled. Like word of that gets around, so like now you've shrunk the number of teams that are looking at you and willing to take you on because they're like, I don't want to put that in my quarterback room. Like if he handled
Right.
that way, how's he going to handle it when he's not playing in September? Like why would I want that? I don't want cameras in there. And we've been over this before with backup quarterbacks and the philosophy. It's not the same job as starting quarterback, So how's he going to handle that? And I think that was a big question for a lot of teams. So I 100% understand why he fell, and he didn't help himself in shrinking the pool of teams that were willing to take him.
Yeah.
And I just think the whole thing was mishandled from the start because he and his camp didn't take an honest view of who he was as a prospect. And you'd hope you and I both worked with Dion, and I like Dion personally. I would just hope like the kid takes this the right way, and handle and that the lessons learned from this help shape him as a professional athlete. You'd hope that would be the result of this. And again, we can get more into it later in the week.
Dion wasn't giving me any notes on my blogs at NFL Network. I'll say that. But sometimes we may have been in the same building.